Hey, it's Keisha. Welcome and welcome back. We are on our next reading in the Aquarian, chapters 100 and 101. It'll be the end of the Sermon on the Mount. So let's go ahead and center, close our eyes, take a deep breath in and out. Just let each exhale release all the busyness of the day. Inhale gratitude for this time of focus and togetherness. Just feel yourself becoming more and more present in your body, in this space, in this time. And just begin to collect all of your excess random thoughts and send them into a balloon that's just in front of you, just above your head. Any cares, concerns, things you have to do, it'll all get done. All the things that are on your heart, just put them in the balloon. And now gently, with your exhale, blow the balloon out into space and see it drifting further and further away from you. And notice how much more present you are. And now gently and lovingly call all parts of yourself back to yourself. And know that all that comes back to you that's necessary is cleansed through the ethers. Feel yourself made whole. And now we'll see a column of white light coming down over us. And that light is space, peace, wisdom, effortless power. And gently rise up in that light, rising up higher and higher in that column, out of physicality and the earthly existence. And we'll find ourselves in the groves of the masters, ready to begin. So, Sermon on the Mount continues. Jesus formulates and presents to the 12 a practical code of spiritual ethics. And we conclude with the code of ethics, and the Christines return to Capernaum. There is a rule that carnal man has made, and which he rigidly observes. Do unto other men as they do unto you. As others judge, they judge. As others give, they give. Now, while you walk with men as men, judge not, and you shall not be judged. For as you judge, you shall be judged, and as you give, it shall be given to you. If you condemn, you are condemned. When you show mercy, men are merciful to you. And if you love in such a way that carnal man can comprehend your love, you will be well loved. And so the wise man of this world does unto other men as he would have them do unto him. The carnal man does good to other men for selfish gain, for he expects to have his blessings multiplied and then returned. He does not stop to note the end. Man is himself the field. His deeds are seeds, and what he does to others grows apace, and harvest time is sure. Behold the yield. If he has sown the wind, he reaps the wind. If he has sown the noxious seeds of scandal, theft, and hate, a sensuality of crime, the harvest is assured, and he must reap what he has sown. Yea, more. The seeds produce 100-fold. The fruit of righteousness and peace and love and joy can never spring from noxious seeds. The fruit is like the seed. And when you sow seeds of right, because it is the right, and not in the way of trade expecting rich rewards. The carnal man abhors the spirit law, because it takes away his liberty to live in sin. Beneath its light, he cannot satisfy his passions and desires. He is at enmity with him who walks in holy breath. The carnal man has killed the holy men of old, the prophets and the seers. And he will buffet you, will charge you falsely, scourge you, and imprison you, and think he does the will of God to slay you in the streets. But you may not prejudge nor censure him who does you wrong. Each one has problems to be solved, and he must solve them for himself. The man who scourges you may have a load of sin to bear, but how about your own? A little sin in one who walks in holy breath is greater in the sight of God than monster sins in him who never knew the way. How can you see the splinter in your brother's eye while you have chunks within your own? First, take the chunks out of your own eye, and then you may behold the splinter in your brother's eye and help him take it out. And while your eyes are full of foreign things, you cannot see the way, for you are blind. And when the blind lead forth the blind, both lose the way and fall into the slough. If you would lead the way to God, you must be clear in sight, as well as pure in heart. The fruitage of the tree is all too fine to feed the carnal mind. If you would throw a diamond to a hungry dog, lo, he would turn away or else attack you in rage. The incense that is sweet to God is quite offensive to Beelzebub. The bread of heaven is but chaff to men who cannot comprehend the spirit life. The master must be wise and feed the soul with what it can digest. The master must be wise and feed the soul with what it can digest. If you have not the food for every man, just ask and you shall have. Ask earnestly and you shall find. Just speak the word and knock, the door will fly ajar. No one has ever asked in faith and did not have. No one ever sought in vain. No one ever knocked aright and has failed to find an open door. When men shall ask you for the bread of heaven, turn not away, not to give them the fruit of the carnal trees, nor give them the fruit of carnal trees. If a son, would ask you for a loaf, would you give him the stone? If he would ask you for a fish, would you give him the serpent of the dust? What you would have your God give unto you, give unto men. The measure of your worth lies in your service unto men. There is a way that leads into the perfect life. Few find it at a time. It is a narrow way. It lies among the rocks and pitfalls of the carnal life, but in the way there are no pitfalls and no rocks. There is a way that leads to righteousness and want. It is a spacious way, and many walk therein. It lies among the pleasure groves of carnal life. Beware, for many claim to walk the way of life who walk the way of death. But they are false in word and deed, false prophets they. They clothe themselves in skins of sheep while they are vicious wolves. They cannot long conceal themselves. Men know them by their fruits. You cannot gather grapes from thorns, nor from the thistles figs. The fruit is daughter of the tree, and like the parent, so the child. And every tree that bears not wholesome fruit is plucked up by the roots and cast away. Because a man prays long and loud is not a sign that he is a saint. The praying men are not all in the kingdom of the soul. The man who lives the holy life, who does the will of God, abides within the kingdom of the soul. The good man from the treasures of his heart sends blessedness and peace to all the world. The evil man sends thoughts that blight and wither hope and joy and fill the world with wretchedness and woe. Men think and act and speak out of the abundance of the heart. And when the judgment hour shall come, a host of men will enter pleadings for themselves and think to buy the favor of the judge with words. They will say, Lo, we have wrought a multitude of works in the omnific name. Have we not prophesied? Or have we not prophesied? Have we not cured all manner of disease? Have we not cast the evil spirits out of those obsessed? And then the judge will say, I know you not. You rendered service unto God in words when in your heart you worshiped Beelzebub. The evil one may use the powers of life and do a multitude of mighty works. Depart from me, you workers of iniquity. The man who hears the words of life and does them not is like the man who built his house upon the sand, which, when the floods come on, is washed away and all is lost. But he who hears the words of life and in an honest, sincere heart receives and treasures them and lives the holy life is like the man who builds his house upon the rock. The floods may come, the winds may blow, the storms may beat upon his house. It is not moved. Go forth and build your life upon the solid rock of truth, and all the powers of the evil one will shake it not. And Jesus finished all his sayings on the mount, and then he, with the 12, returned to Capernaum. So there we are. And so I have a few notes. So just the distinction here at the very beginning he makes. So we have the Hammurabi Code, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. The people were living under the code of do unto others as others have done unto you. And he, bringing in the new law, is saying, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. So the intention there changes. The intention and the attention, I guess. 10:8. Man is himself the field, in his deeds are seized, and what he does to others grows apace. The harvest time is sure. What you do matters. How you apply yourself matters. Sow seeds of right because it is right, and not because you expect to profit from it. What I liked about verses 14 and 15 is, he is at enmity with him who walks in holy breath. The carnal man has killed the holy men of old, the prophets and the seers. He will buffet you, will charge you falsely, scourge you, imprison you, and then he thinks he does the will of God to slay you in the streets. He's letting them know they're going to teach this truth and they will be maligned. They will experience people trying to do them harm because of it. And I think about, we've all been maligned, right? We stand up to do truth and there are people who are going to gossip about us or, be jealous of your light. It's really no different. And he's just preparing them for what's to come. And we can take a lesson from that as well. Just know that if you shine your light, there are people that are going to try to dim it. But what he goes on to say, and I think that's very important, is that each one has problems to be solved and he must solve them for himself. That's a fantastic way, I think. It's a fantastic way of thinking that I think helps you forgive other people. When you're initially, tempted to be mad at them or to strike back in anger with harsh words or deed, just realizing that, you know what, you're going through something. And so I'm going to pass by this debt you're creating and I'm going to offer more compassion. And I'm not going to hold it against you. That is the discipline he's that he's trying to share. And that's the discipline we should take within ourselves and how we act with one another. In the end of that chapter, 20 through 24, when he's talking about the splinter in your brother's eye, you can't help him with that if you have the splinter in your own. So don't worry about what other people are doing. There's enough within you to focus on that if you do that and clear and elevate yourself, then you will have something to share. But if you're all down in the muck, driven by ego and carnal desire, then you might think you know all about somebody when you're talking about them and you're having that conversation, but there's stuff within you that needs to be fixed. So work on that instead. Moving on to, the next chapter, 101. Verse 4 I thought was great. The master must be wise and feed the soul with what it can digest. So you know how when you know truth and you want to share it with everybody, but if they're not receptive, then it falls on deaf ears and you get frustrated and you keep trying to teach them and tell them, but they're not listening. That's because they're not receptive. And so you are in the wrong to transgress their sovereignty by continuing to speak to them about these things that they show no interest in. So we need to be more mindful and respectful. And then he says, if you have not food for every man, meaning if you don't have the wisdom or the succor that the person in front of you needs in order for them to be healed, don't fret about that. Ask. Be in communion with Spirit and ask that you be given what they need. Because for everyone who asks, the answer is given. For everyone who knocks on the door, it opens. For those who seek, we find it. And then he says, you know, what you would have God give unto you, give unto men. So the blessings that you want to receive of God, give them of yourself to the people that are around you. The measure of your worth lies in your service to others. So after he says, you know, the fruit is the daughter of the tree, and like the parent, so the child, and every tree that bears not wholesome fruit is plucked up by its roots and cast away. I just want to note that again, you know, we shouldn't judge. Because when we see somebody in a moment where they're having a hard time, that's just a snapshot. We don't know the bigger picture and the bigger story that is playing out. And maybe we see what we think is faltering in the moment, but we don't know where they are in their development. We don't know where they are on their path and what experiences they are going through in order to get them to where they want to go. That one struck me today because, you know, I'm a year or so out, 2 years out roughly, on this huge transition that I had from when I left my corporate life to where I am now. And I left my corporate life because it didn't serve me, and I wanted to be a minister in full, and I wanted to teach and heal and cultivate that life. But in the process, I went through tremendous financial hardship, and there were people who claimed me as their family, whether by blood or by friendship, who during that time that was incredibly difficult for me turned away because it was too hard to be around me when I was going through something so difficult, and or judged me that, oh, she, you know, there's something wrong with her because she's having all these problems. And you know, I lost a lot of people, family and friends, during that time. But it was all based on what they thought they saw, not seeing me, not recognizing that for every challenge I had met up in my life to that point, I had overcome it. That I was just going through a series of challenges that if they were thinking about it and not thinking about themselves and how my hardship might reflect poorly on them, or the fear that because I was having hardship, I would ask them for something that they couldn't do, which never happened. You know, they were then lost to me because because they couldn't see the bigger context and they couldn't stick with me during the hard parts. I have no use for you now that things are great, because I can't trust you, right? You don't have the substance that I can hold on to if things get rocky, you know? And so like now that I'm back in all my golden light, you know, and I'm all sparkly and shiny, you know, they might want a piece, but the answer is no. And no thank you, right? Because the storms of life are too intense for fair weather friends. And I need to surround myself with people I can trust. And I think you've each experienced that when you have tried to walk a path that is individual for you and it's stepped outside of what others would have, what others would want for you, or what makes other people uncomfortable. And you just have to stay firm and stay true to your path and in your faith. And so the last little bit from chapter 101. The man who hears the words of life and does them not is like the man who builds his house upon the sand, which when the floods come, is washed away and all is lost. But he who hears the words of life and in an honest, sincere heart receives and treasures them and lives the holy life is like the man who builds his house upon a rock. The floods may come, the winds may blow, the storms may beat upon his house, but he is not moved. One of the things that I picked up a lot of Bible verses to help sustain me during that difficult period. But when I read this, the first one that I thought of was, God is in the midst of me and I will not be moved. And that is what you gain when you hear the voice of Spirit and begin to follow it. Every step becomes sure. And while you don't, And while you might not know what it's going to look like when you get 2 or 3 steps ahead, it doesn't matter because the step you're on is solid. And when you're ready for the next one, it'll be there. And so I will leave you with that for this week. Next week, we will see what happens next and where our merry band of brothers travels to. All right. I look forward to it. I love you in the meantime. I'll see you.